Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Talking Elite Fitness. I'm Sean Woodland, joined as always by Tommy Marquez, who's in a coffee shop. Tommy, how you doing?
I'm getting caffeinated currently because I need it. And just trudging through the week.
Fantastic. And also Lauren Khalil. Lauren, how are you?
I'm great. I'm already caffeinated, and now I'm trying to hydrate myself so I don't wither up like SpongeBob.
I've had 2 coffees today, so that's I'm already ahead of my quota, so I'm doing all right. Today we are going to talk about what is going on now in the latest with the Lazar Jukic incident, and that is Luka, his brother, has now responded. We're going to talk about his lengthy post and just discuss that and add some details of some things that we've been told and just try to work our way through this. So that is going to be today's show. Before we do that, though, we want to thank our sponsor for today, and that is Thirdzy. Thirdzy is the collagen-based recovery drink that helps you improve your sleep and your recovery, and it was an absolute godsend for me when I was in Birmingham, Alabama for the Masters CrossFit Games, because I don't sleep well, period. I don't sleep well in hotels. And Thirdzy absolutely helped with that. It has L-theanine. It doesn't have melatonin in it, so it's not non-habit forming. It's got magnesium, GABA, so it helps calm your central nervous system, promoting longer, deeper, healthier sleep. And it is delicious. And you drink it every night before you go to bed, and you're going to fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and feel better when you wake up. You can go to thirdzy.com, or you can scan the QR code on the screen right down there, and it'll take you to the website. You can use the code TEF, and you will save 20%, and you will improve your sleep and recovery. So Thirdzy, man, that was clutch bringing them on the road, because
They're travel packs, man.
Oh, I had a panic attack.
I'd never unpack them.
I thought I didn't have enough, and then I found one that was just like hanging out in my backpack. Like I keep that spare one just in case of emergency, and it was hanging. I was like, because I almost went that last night without it. That would have been terrible. So yeah, big thanks to Thirdzy for sponsoring the show. They're fantastic people with a great product, and you should go get some now.
And follow them on Instagram. They have a new account.
Yes.
Thirdzy Sleep.
Absolutely. But it's you're going to thank us, because you're going to sleep better, sleep longer. And like I said, the most important thing, you're going to feel a lot better when you wake up in the morning. Okay, let's just get right into it. We had a couple of things that we were going to actually talk about today, and that all went out the window because we're recording this on September 5th. And earlier today, I think it was our time, because I know, Lauren, you texted this, and it was like really,
you were
really,
asleep. So
yeah,
I
think I had just gotten up. It was like 6 a.m. our time. You texted us. And here's what it was. There is Luka Jukic put out a lengthy statement on Instagram. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you're watching this, it's obviously on the screen right now. And he goes into his relationship with his brother and how he's, the grief that he's feeling. And then there's some details about what they did leading up to the opening event, what their plan was going into the event. And then on page 2 of this, at the bottom, this is the first thing I'll read. While entering the water, Lazar missed the entrance, which cost him a few seconds. So there's a little bit of a language gap here. So I'm going to try to fill in to make some things just to make it a little more sense. That cost him a few seconds. So with me being very close to the lead group in which he was in, we ended up entering the water at almost the same time. That was the last time I saw him. He goes on to talk about his swimming capacity, kind of what was going on in the water. Then this is page 3. Luka writes, once I crossed the finish line, I was let known by some of my coaching staff that was standing behind the spectators fence that my finish was between 15th and 18th place. I was super happy with that. I asked who won and heard Yella. I said, oh, no way. And kept walking to see where Lazar is, because I was expecting him to be already done for some time. Then he talks about running to see Dave Castro. I quickly ran to see where Dave Castro is, found him leaning at the fence close to the lake, and I asked, what is going on? Do you know where my brother is? Dave replied, he was number 27, right? They said his chip crossed the finish line. So that's page 3. Page 4, he goes on to say that was a huge relief for him. Then he writes that one of the women from CrossFit, the CrossFit Games staff, came up to him and said that what Dave told him was a mistake, that we're still missing 2 chip timers. At that time, the stream was already taken down. I didn't have my phone anywhere near me, so I didn't watch any of the footage. I heard that CrossFit staff was asking all the spectators and media to leave, and in the next few hours, I realized that we are waiting for someone to come and find the body, which I later identified through the photo. What I later saw on video was that there were no attempts to save Lazar. He was fighting and went down close to 2 very unequipped volunteers, and then in parentheses, yes, on the paddleboard, who didn't see him, and very close to the finish line. After hours at the lake, I reached my hotel, still in my swimwear. 10 minutes into being in my hotel room, I received a call saying that Dave Castro wants to talk to me. That's the end of page 4. So we moved to page 5. Dave entered the room with Nicole Carroll, sat there for some time and said, "We want to continue the games as a tribute for your brother." In the shape I was in mentally at that moment, I said many things, but most important ones were, I don't care, nothing will bring him back, and I don't think I am thinking clearly, so this decision should not be up to me. Dave replied, "It's not up to you anyways." Excuse me. Later, the decision to continue the games was presented as, quote, the wish of the family. There was one more conversation with Dave Castro, and it happened the next morning while I was sitting in my room with my longtime sponsors and friends, Craig and Joss. Knowing that there will be a tribute to Lazar that morning, which all of the athletes will attend, I asked Dave, because I know he is overseeing everything, to provide me a level of privacy I needed at that time. I wanted to come to the tribute, which at that time I didn't know how it will look like, but I didn't want any media around me. I didn't want to be around the athletes, and I didn't want to be on the screen. As my wish was not respected, after that, I didn't have any other conversation with anyone from HQ. I was asked to meet Dave on Saturday night, which I rejected, and I was asked to attend the closing ceremony, which I rejected as well. On Friday midday, I got a call from the medical examiner's office who told me that the doctor that did the autopsy categorized Lazar's body shape as, quote, extremely fit, and that there were no signs of a heart attack. While I won't point fingers on this post and try to ruin anyone's name, I feel obligated with my family to do everything that is legally in my power to ask questions, go deeper into this case, and try to see whose fault is that there was no reaction from the multi-million-dollar organization, whose most of the staff's job is to make this one weekend perfect. So he goes on to say he doesn't care who went on competing, who didn't. Every athlete continue to have their own reason for or belief and why they wanted to honor Lazar. But that was the stuff that I read verbatim, and you can go read this whole post, but the stuff that I read verbatim is more or less the main stuff that's people are talking about right now. And obviously there's some things in here that don't make Dave or CrossFit look very good. The thing I wanted to talk about was when Luka said that he expressed his wish to not be on screen or not have media follow him around. So I know I've talked to someone who was in the room on the broadcast team when Dave and Don talked to the broadcast team prior to the memorial. And what was told to the broadcast team is that, and this is a quote from the person that told me this, Luka didn't want any media following him around. So there was no mention of Luka not wanting to be on camera, but just didn't want people following him around. And I can tell you, knowing the people that I know on the broadcast team, that had the explicit message gotten to them to not put him on camera, that never would have happened. Never would have happened. So I don't know if that was something that got lost in translation or it just wasn't delivered properly, but the people who needed to know not to put him on camera were not specifically told not to put him on camera. They were told, don't follow him around with a crew.
And there's a distinction there because anyone that's followed any stream coverage of situations like a funeral, putting the family on camera is pretty common practice. if they're in attendance. And so that distinction needs to be made typically if they don't want to be on camera at all, or they just don't want someone following them around. Because and this sounds very nitpicky, but with the camera resources available to you in a situation like that, you don't need someone following them around to put them on camera because of the equipment that is available to you for the stream.
But
and when I spoke with the guys that make the decision of putting somebody on camera, I spoke to them on Sunday evening to say, hey, I've heard from some athletes that this in fact is what Luka was saying. They confirmed that at no point were they told not to put him on camera. So based on Luka's post, I think it just comes down to like Sean, something was lost in translation. And again, these are experiences that nobody ever thinks that they need to be in. And possibly Luka didn't think that he needed to be as clear as what we know from being on a broadcast team, or there's some kind of loss in communication, but it's hard to really say because none of us were in that room and we don't know exactly how the messaging was or wasn't delivered.
The only reason I wanted to point that out is that this is and there's a lot of other stuff in here that's a bigger deal than what we're talking about right now. But I just wanted to start about with this one because I had someone with firsthand knowledge talk to me about it. Is that this is not a case where it doesn't seem like a case where Luka told this to CrossFit and they said, no, don't worry about it. We're going to do this our own way. We're totally disregarding you. It just seems like the wrong message got delivered. The stuff that is more concerning is where you see like when he called the people on the paddleboards volunteers. And that doesn't mean that they're not volunteers who didn't have the right amount of experience to be out there. But makes it seem like they didn't have the requirements to be that you would want for someone to be on the water in that position.
Well, I think it's important to note a couple of things, and I apologize ahead of time for the background noise in my area. But there's a couple things that need to be brought to the forefront so people are aware of some of the resources and information that's out there. I'm wearing a Known and Notable shirt. That's a shout out to Mike Halpin and the work that he's done. He has published a down-to-the-minute timeline, including footage and video of everything that transpired at the lake and moving up into the cancellation and end of that event. It is very thorough. He provides resources. There are Freedom of Information Act requests and everything that went into it. It is an excellent piece of journalism. Just from a structural standpoint, it's heartbreaking to go through. So I caution people knowing what you're getting into.
Oh, we lost Tommy.
Oh, your audio cut out.
All right, we'll let Tommy fix that. No.
Yeah.
Yep, we got you, but you're really faint.
Oh, hold on 1 sec.
I don't think it's your microphone. I think it's from your computer.
It's a connection. I think the thing for me is like in the bigger picture. So we're coming off a weekend where we had 2 successful competitions with the Teenage CrossFit Games and the Masters CrossFit Games. And on site, the feeling was like no one had forgotten about what had happened. But it was kind of a first step towards getting back to normalcy. And this is a stark reminder that this issue and what happened at the games and the fallout from it is going to continue to overshadow things and continue to pop back up like this for a long period of time. And as much as we all want to kind of get back to normal, like this is not going to happen anytime soon. It's unfortunate and it sucks. But we do need to find out the truth and we do need to find out the answers. But it is a reminder that like there is no quick and easy, painless way out of this. This is just going to be a long, hard, difficult slog. And I don't think anything, there's nothing. I don't think anything good is going to come out of this. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but it's just.
It's going to be far down the line though.
Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, sorry about that delay there.
No problem.
Some technical issues, but and that goes back to some of the other things. It's like it's important to know what the resources are. That article from Halpin, And there's also, and Lauren, we can speak to this being on site. There was a sequence of events there throughout the weekend, whereas certain media outlets and certain athletes spoke to Luka directly during the weekend, and subsequently chose not to continue covering the weekend or competing in the competition. And that was in stark contrast to the information that was presented to all of us on site, based on some of the things that Luka also describes here, saying that continuing forward with the competition was, aligned with the family's wishes and had the blessing of the family. And Luka's statement contradicts that in a very big and real way, and a very worrisome and troublesome way that now brings a lot of issues into question, and a lot of people, I believe, are rightfully outraged.
That's the most concerning part in this entire thing to me, even more so than when he claimed that the people on paddle boards were volunteers, is that from the account from Luka, it's saying that the messaging to the athletes was that they were going to do the games because it was the wish of the family. But what Luka's quote does not state that. And I think that paints a bigger picture of like why athletes pulled out after they were hearing more accounts from Luka. And Tommy and I, being on site, we had both heard a similar story from athletes that this was happening, but you never really know. And it's everybody's emotions are so heightened in the moment that it was almost like, yeah, I know I'm hearing this from athletes that I trust and athletes that I think are telling the truth, but you also don't want to believe it because it's like, maybe that's not what Luka's going to say when he finally speaks out. So when he posted this morning, it was heartbreaking. It was heart-wrenching. It was just the worst thing that you can see, because what was communicated to the athletes, according to Luka, couldn't be more different.
So this is my question, and I don't know because I wasn't on site, but I think, is this, and this is one of those things that would require further investigation. Is this then a concerted effort on Cross's part to obfuscate and to lie? Or is this something where emotions were running high, a bunch of different things were being said, and there was just a miscommunication between the parties? And I don't know which one it is. I know there's some people that feel like it's the former, and that's why there are people
I don't
calling
know if
for
it matters at this point.
Okay, why not?
I really don't, because I think at this point it's like one of the biggest things you have to, in times of crisis, is not letting a singular mistake snowball into multiple mistakes. And regardless of what your intent is, multiple mistakes were made, and after the initial big one, someone died. And
agreed. And let me make it clear. I'm just trying to be like fair and look at both sides. I'm not advocating for either one here.
I don't think that we're doing that. But
fair would have been making sure Lazar Jukic had the proper medical care to get pulled out of the water.
Agreed. And I think it all comes back to that. And that's even the same thing like we were talking earlier about. If you it doesn't matter what caused him to get into distress. I'm more concerned about the response.
I think a court will see it differently. I think the court's going to look into every single thing, and I think that for Luka's sake, especially given that recent statement, they're going to, and the family's sake, the people that are most directly affected by this more than anyone else, because a brother, a son, a life partner was lost, that they're going to want to uncover everything. And
I don't think that there's one thing that went wrong. I think that it was a domino effect of things that went wrong. And to put the blame on one person, I don't think is fair.
It's maybe not fair, but ultimately, this is why you have hierarchy of organization, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, responsibility falls on certain people's shoulders, right? That's why you're given the title. That's why you're given the pay. That's why you're given all the responsibility. And ultimately, as it's like what we're talking about right now, and you can jump to either conclusion, whatever conclusion you want to watch. We're talking about a catastrophic tragedy that happened under the watch of someone whose responsibility as an event organizer, and it doesn't have to be someone in particular, as a company, your job was to make sure that this never happens.
Well, and that's my question is like, so the biggest issue and the biggest question that needs to be answered is, why wasn't the help available when it needed to be available? Right? Isn't that the biggest question?
Yeah,
That's
because then all of the other questions just are a domino effect of
right,
that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately going to be the fire starter, right? And then everything else is just going to stoke the flames, as you add more fuel, because this is typically what, I mean, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but when crisis, something like this happens, it does an extraordinary job of finding all the weak points in a system, right?
Yes.
Because suddenly the entire system comes under a microscope, and longstanding issues and things that were okay and acceptable for a long time, or things that were issues that just by stroke of luck or serendipitous effect didn't get exposed when they should have, come to light. And more often than not, that's when the house of cards, or with the system as a whole, has to get torn down and rebuilt.
And I think too. Go ahead. Sorry, Tom. I didn't know you.
And it's like we've said, it's just awful that it has to come under these circumstances, right? But the one thing that should never happen happened, and it's an irreversible thing. But as what should have happened on the days surrounding the event and moving forward, the minute after it was determined what happened, is all the stops should have been pulled out to make sure that it never. That one mistake doesn't turn into 2 mistakes, doesn't turn into 10 mistakes, and the whole thing doesn't snowball.
Yeah, and I think go ahead, Lauren, because I just want to make okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but my point was this: is that putting that part about it not being a heart attack, I think, guides people more to that it had to be something heat related, or not.
I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate either. But doesn't it seem like people are now pivoting to that because of that statement, or am I making a leap there that shouldn't be made?
I'm just relaying what I've seen. People are saying, heat related issue, cramping, whatever, other exhaustion related issues, but yeah, I'm not Luka. I didn't have that conversation with the coroner. I haven't appealed to the coroner's office to get an official determination. So I'm not like beyond what Luka has said. The only person that that has spoken up, that has talked to the coroner, is Luka.
Right. Okay. That was point I wanted to make. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, and just going back to when I said that I don't think one person is responsible, that doesn't necessarily mean I don't think one person shouldn't be held accountable. It's the decision maker, because you go back to how many medical staff did we have this year versus previous year? Was funding cut? Were they volunteers? Were they equipped to do their job? I think of if I was on a paddle board and I didn't have a buoy or any type of life vest at 160 pounds, trying to, even if there was ample time, jumping in and saving somebody who's around 200 pounds now. And again, I do not want to be insensitive when I say this, but now there's a risk that we both lose our lives. You look at all of those other variables in the sequence of events, and who is the person that made the decisions for the staffing, the medical team, etc. And how did we get to where we are today? How could this happen? And that's where we need to start looking back to.
Well, and look, we've been asking that since the beginning, but I think what Luka's post does is like just continue to call into question Cross's credibility in this whole thing. And because we're just getting two different stories like that. And I think what it also does is that if you're someone who believes that, that Dave is the problem and that Dave needs to go, I think it further reinforces your opinion about that take.
Yeah. I mean, if you're already on that side of the fence, I mean, it's only going to solidify your position 100-fold. And that's the reality, right? Because it's not a good look. It's not. I don't care any way you slice it. We all of the focus in the immediate aftermath. I mean, you go into the media room, you go around the building, anyone we talked to, everyone was focused on how's Luka doing, how's Anya doing, how's the family doing. And when the message was relayed to us both directly and through second, third hand, I mean, multiple times, that the moving forward had Luka and the family's blessing, and that they were consulted with, and they like signed off on it. That was like a huge like, oh, okay, like we can move forward and start to like emotionally, mentally, spiritually start to grieve and heal and do whatever we can to make something out of this weekend that ultimately can support Luka, the family, Lazar's memory, and all of those different things. And to even have an inkling of that was done under false pretenses coming directly from Luka's mouth is, I mean, that is,
yeah. Well,
for a lot of people, that's good. Not just for leadership, but for a lot of people that their trust in CrossFit HQ, absent of like a complete fire sale and rebuild, is going to be irrevocably broken. Sorry.
I mean, if you came into this before today, if you had the perception that Dave was the issue, and I know there are a lot of people that do, and a lot of people don't have that perception. But if you did come into that, like all that does is just, like Tommy said, it just increases that even more. Now, if you are on the side of wait till the results are in of the investigation and all this, and then you read this, I'm wondering, like, how does this now affect that perception?
I think it's a mixed bag. It's really hard to say. I think it's going to depend on the individual, really. I mean, like, you listen to any of the online discourse, it's all over the place. And that's not unusual, I don't think, in a time like this.
No, I don't either. And I agree. Like, yes, I mean, I guess we do need to wait until all this is out. But again, there's these things that keep coming up that sort of steer you to this pattern. And we've talked to people about it that's kind of gone on for the past 10 years about all the near misses that we've had as far as safeties and stuff goes. And I think this just continues to, if you had that perception, this is going to just further entrench you into that corner. But if you're someone who's, is defending Dave and saying, wait, we have to wait. Like, and then you see this, is it still, okay, well, that doesn't do anything to change my opinion. We still need to wait till the results are out of the investigation. Like, I'm genuinely curious about people who had that, who are still in his corner. And
well, because I think that it comes down to a he said, she said scenario. And even if that is the case, if it is a he said, she said, or Sean, as you alluded to, maybe there was something lost in communication or translation, why wouldn't you still try to right the wrong? Why wouldn't you still try to give clarity to the person if there was? And maybe there was. Based on what Luka posted, though, he did say that Dave tried to reach out to him on Saturday.
Right. So what if that was an attempt to do that?
And that there is a possibility of that.
Why do you think it doesn't matter?
Because at that point you've already stacked wrongs, and
you've opened Pandora's box.
Yeah, you've already stacked. If this is the case, okay, this is under the premise that everything that Luka said had happened exactly that way, then you've already had two situations where your organization ran an event where my brother lost his life, and then you deceived me in multiple scenarios. And almost most people would understand you don't get a third strike. It's two strikes and you're out in that instance. And I don't blame him for a second if that's the case. And the unfortunate reality of how our society works nowadays is there are people that even in the face of overwhelming facts and evidence will still not have their mind changed for no reason. And on both sides of the equation, there will be people that will be presented with overwhelming evidence that, if we're looking at it objectively and logically, should change their point of view, and they just won't.
What do you think? What should CrossFit's, should there be any should there be any response to this on CrossFit's part? And can they even, with the pending or the investigation going on, like, can they even say anything?
Anything that they say right now will be brought up in court. And I think that there's more that could hurt them by responding at this point than protect them if they're looking at it from a legal perspective.
I would be very surprised
right.
if all of CrossFit's people didn't have some sort of gag order on this and just keeping them from speaking.
And even if they didn't, I feel like we're to a point now where for a large number of this members of this community, the credibility is just gone. And they wouldn't.
The credibility is gone. The trust is gone. And I mean, this is the drum that we've been beating for so long, is we want to see more transparency and build the trust with CrossFit HQ to the community, to the athletes. And this is just another example of a step in the worst possible direction of that. And I really don't know how you get the buy-in back from the athletes. I mean, I know we have these off-season competitions coming up, but they're run by different people. So it will be very interesting and telling to see what happens after the new year, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. This didn't offer any more clarity to anything. I mean, I think what it does, I think what it did do is just put people more solidly in their corners.
I mean, it provided more clarity on where Luka stands, and to me, that
absolutely yeah.
All I mean, if we're talking about the grand scheme of things, Luka's position and where he is and how he feels is as important or more important than anything else.
Yeah, this is one of those things where it's not like the response is there's like both sides agree that you know what I mean? Like it's this is horrible. Thank you so much to CrossFit for being, for help for doing X, Y, and Z. Like this is clearly not that. Like this is not a unity statement.
No,
definitely not.
Yeah. So definitely I think you're right about that. But it's again, as I said earlier, like this is just another reminder of how this is going to continue. Like, and this isn't even, I don't even think we're halfway into this right now.
No, not even. I mean, we're probably 1/10 of the way in there.
That was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's just getting started, and it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly for a lot of people, and some. I mean, yeah, it's going to get bad for sure, and you hope that all of this doesn't happen for nothing, And I hope that ultimately Luka and the family can find their peace and their resolution, a resolution that's as fitting as possible given the circumstances, really. And I don't know, the one thing that seems clear to me is that, like, if you're sitting here looking back at all of this and you think that nothing needs to change, then like, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I think, okay, that's a good point, because there are now, and we talked about this on the last show, like this feels like 2020 all over again, where the community got split. It was either, pro Craig's got to go. Everyone was clashing. And now it seems like we are again. Is there any common ground that can be had now between the Dave camp and the get rid of Dave camp? Like, is there any way, are there any sort of compromises that could be like, so you say change, one side doesn't want to let Dave go, one side can't keep Dave?
I thought the closest thing to that, if there was going to be common ground, if people really have their heels dug in, was what the PFAA offered, if I'm being honest. So Dave
gets removed from sport but stays in the affiliates. And I would agree with that. I think that is the most likely common ground right there.
That's the closest thing, I think, to a reasonable compromise that you'll get from two sides that are very much opposed to, like, culpability for the issue.
Then beyond the Dave thing, then I think once you get past that, then I think everybody can agree on, okay, there needs to be some sort of safety standard. There needs, especially for water events, there needs to be, I don't think anybody would disagree with more transparency around these things. I don't think anybody would disagree with having a set and tried and true standard for any CrossFit event that wants to have an event in the water, across a competition that wants to have an event in the water. like after you get past the whole Dave issue, I think there are a lot of things that people could agree on here, but that is going to be just the biggest sticking point of this whole thing as far as bringing the two sides of this community together.
Well, and I think one of the things is CrossFit, you don't, just because the athletes in the PFAA are asking for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that CrossFit has to do it no matter what. All that, the whole reason of the PFAA is not to get everything that they want and all of their demands list, but it's having that open dialogue and a professional discussion that allows for feedback and conversations and questions to be asked. And like typically when you have a good agreement, neither parties are going to be happy because you're both getting a little bit of what you want. It's not going to be perfect, but getting closer to finding that and having open conversation and making sure that season structures and safety guidelines are presented well in advance so that people can prepare and know what they're getting into, I think is the first step that needs to be done pretty immediately.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know where we go from here. Like it's just
I don't know.
Once we think like, oh, hey, maybe things are getting back to normal. They're like, they're not.
I feel like a lot of athletes feel like they've been making concessions for years now. I feel like I know a lot of athletes, even some of the old school ones, are saying like it was always a one-way street. CrossFit held all the cards. We did whatever they said, and I think two things can be true. You know, I think in the early days, you had to live and die by CrossFit's sword as an athlete. And that was in some ways how CrossFit was able to get a leg up and actually like get a bit of a piece of momentum going as a sport or an outlet, right? Because I liken it to like the early days of the UFC, right? Like the UFC just got to operate with pretty much impunity on decision making. And then as you evolve, like more stuff needs to be taken into consideration if you want to evolve as a sport and you want to become more professional. Like two things can be true. Yeah, the way it was in the early days worked to some extent. And that's not to say there couldn't have been better ways, but it ultimately got it to where we are now. And then another thing can be simultaneously true, that there needs to be change in order to make it better or to make sure that it has a future beyond, you know, an event like this completely unraveling it.
Yeah, I don't know where we go from here. But I do agree. Like this is change has got to happen. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say, well, maybe they will. I don't know that now we're just going to continue as planned and nothing's going to change and we'll be just fine in 2025. Like I'm willing to listen to that argument. But I don't think it's I don't know how you make that right now. Something.
I mean, I guarantee people, so there are people that feel that way. Humans are interesting creatures.
And that's fine. Like I said, willing to listen to that argument, but I don't know how, I'm really fascinated by that. If you look at this and say nothing needs to change, I want to know what the reasoning is behind it. I genuinely want to know how you feel that way.
Because it's how we've always done it. It is what it is. And I've seen that time and time again out there. And just because it, quote, is what it is, or that's what we've done up to this point, doesn't mean it's right. And doesn't mean that we should just accept that. We should progress and we should have open-minded, critical thinking. And the more people that we can get on board with that, the better conversations that you have.
Yeah, I agree with Lauren in that one. Like inertia is a very real thing. On all aspects of the human experience, and a lot of times once you're caught up in the tide of things, a lot of people just don't want to push against it.
Well, and I think I think change is inevitable here because there seems to be a big enough group of athletes who are like, we're done unless things change, and if things don't change, then something different is going to happen to give them these competitors an outlet to do what they do. I don't know if it's going to be like it's a competitive, another like a competing season to the game, see what it is, but it's not, they're going to be like, oh, well, we tried. I guess we just. But
in the same breath, I think there's enough athletes that will just go on a business as usual.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly, I agree.
And then there's going to be a major divide of who is putting their foot down and not going to move on until they see change, and those that are like, hey, this is my livelihood. And I don't necessarily fault them, but just continuing on regardless of how or if the ecosystem changes.
Well, like I said, I think the ecosystem changes even if there's no change in CrossFit, because there are enough people who are like, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to go figure something else out. Now, whether or not that works, I don't know, but that seems to be a very realistic possibility, because I don't see how and we talked about this on the last show before the Masters games, that you can't make these demands, and then if they don't get met, like there cannot be a backup. There can't be like a lack of a backup plan. It can't be, oh, well, I guess we tried, we'll just go on business as usual. There's got to be a course of action that you take if those demands are not met. And the only thing I can think of that would make sense is for the athletes who are willing to say no more CrossFit, we have to band together and find a way to create our own thing.
Yeah. Or some form of boycott. I mean, organized labor and collective bargaining's biggest tool is striking, right? It's like, whether it's a lockout on the side of the owners, or it's striking in sports or in any other profession. One of my closest friends is going through a labor union strike right now up in Sacramento. The DAs and public defenders are fighting against, and rightfully so, because they deserve a significant raise given and have been negotiated in bad faith. And that's just like, you have to be able to put your foot down and take action.
But the reason that works is because there's no one that they can easily get to replace them. Whereas to Lauren's point, there are some athletes who would be willing to say, we're going to continue this, like we're willing to compete. Then it's not like you still can't have your events in your season, and you still can't, you know what I mean? Like
that's true. But ultimately the gambit is that, will those people bring as much eyeballs, attention, money later on down the line, where it eventually hits CrossFit's wallet? And it's like, I hate, it's a comedy movie, but like The Replacements, right? Or any other strike, a burden season where you have athletes that cross the picket line, and ultimately what happens is the product suffers, and then it starts hitting the parent organization in a real way, where ultimately it makes the biggest effect, and that's their wallet.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember watching the NFL scab games when their players went on strike and they used replacement players, and I'll never forget the game I watched where I think it was the 49ers replacement players were running the wishbone offense in an NFL game. Like that, it was not pretty. So yeah, you are right. It will affect the product, but yeah, I don't know. So to me, like going back to this whole change thing, it just seems like it's inevitable, even if no change is initiated on CrossFit. Like if they just say it's status quo, like it's still going to happen. So
things will be different next season, one way or
things
another.
Things are already
regardless
different.
Of what happens.
Yeah. Anything else that we want to throw into I know we covered a lot of ground and went a lot of different directions with this, and I don't know if we answered anybody's questions, but just trying to bring a little context and clarity on things, and I just try to play devil's advocate and look at things from multiple sides to see if there's an argument that I'm missing. But it's just, I'm just waiting for something that comes out that can maybe unite people. It just seems we're just getting further divided here, and I hate that.
I wouldn't hold your breath for the short term.
I know, I'm not.
Maybe long term, at some point. But it's I would anticipate it getting a little bit darker before it gets brighter.
Agreed.
But
okay.
I would say our hearts just go out to Luka, Anya, the family, everybody that's dealing with it, everybody that's close. I can't even imagine going through this, and just all the content that's out there now too. Moritz Fiebig put out a really good YouTube video. It's in German, but there's subtitles in English of kind of his account of it all. And it's emotional. I mean, Halpin's article from Known and Knowable, I still haven't read it because I know that it's going to take me back there to those moments and be emotional. But I think that it's important to see what everybody is saying. And there's a lot of info out there, and just digest it as you can, and also take care of yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
And to all the people that I know went to Lazarus' funeral last time, it's happened in between now and when we were in Birmingham, in leading up to that, and just there are a lot of people there that we know and have a good relationship with and have shared and broken bread with. And if any of those people come across this episode, I want them to know we're thinking of them and that our door is always open, and we'll reiterate that to anyone else if they just need anything from emotional support to anything else. So.
Yeah. All right. We're going to have more on this possibly in the near future. Things are, actually I was having conversations with people while we were doing the show about stuff. So
yeah,
that'll happen relatively soon.
I would tell people that, like, look, this is going to be a long, drawn out issue, and it's something that deserves proper attention all the way through. And it's at times it's going to feel like we're constantly talking about this, but things of this ilk and of this serious in nature deserve that and demand that. And so there's going to be weeks where it's going to be a little bit back to quote unquote normal. We'll talk competition. We'll talk things going on in the community. Yeah. And then, in an instant, something like this is going to drop and it's going to be right back in the public eye. So I just want to be clear because, it's easy for us to suddenly get past a certain point and kind of ease back into our routines and feel like maybe we're past that. And it's just not going to be the case.
And if you are someone who would like to hear more about the competition and what happened this past weekend, I did an interview earlier with Joel Gaudette, who called the teenage competition. I got his thoughts on that. That's going to be up on our YouTube channel, so you can check that out as well. And I think, look, at the end of the day, I just want to remind everybody, regardless of where you stand on this issue, I think we can all agree we want the games and the game season and the sport to be better. We want it to survive, and we want it to engage more people, a bigger audience, and continue to grow. So if we can all just remember we're all shooting at the same target, maybe just from different sides of the aisle, maybe that will allow us to be a little more, nice to each other online when we're engaging in these discussions, because I really do believe that regardless of what side you're on here, everyone kind of wants the same thing. And it's an emotional time, and I understand why there's a lot of anger and why people are kind of lashing out, because this is a horrible thing. But yeah, let's see where this goes next. But yeah, just wanted to hop on and talk about the latest that happened today. And like Tommy said, there's going to be some opportunities in the near future for us to talk about competition. We got Tier Wadapalooza SoCal coming up in a couple weeks, and I think that's going to be a really fun event. Like, that's going to be cool, and I'm looking forward to being part of that and looking forward to talking about it. And we're hoping to get some athletes on here relatively soon as well to kind of continue this conversation. So we'll keep you posted on that. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to our sponsor, Thirdsy. Remember to check them out, thirdsy.com. Use the code TEF. You will save 20%, and you will improve your sleep and your recovery. For Lauren Khalil and Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other, be better, and we will talk to you guys next time.